In 2010, when my son was 4 years old, I took him to one of the most special places I know of in California, a highly decorated rock art boulder located on Felice Creek in Northern California. This petroglyph boulder is where people have come to acquire power and inner vision for many thousands of years. I've always believed that the concentric circles found carved on this rock were especially useful in that endeavor. Today, the Felice Creek petroglyph boulder is managed by the Archaeological Conservancy, but at the time of my last visit 10 years ago, it was privately owned. At the time of our visit, the late Dahinda Mehta was the landowner and longtime guardian of this important site, which Dahinda called terrarium. It was Dahinda's vision that led to his acquiring the property in 1975 in order to protect it. When Dahinda and his wife, Norma Greer, contacted me about their desire to see the property protected in the future, I visited Terrarium to meet with them and to discuss what I thought might be their options for preserving the land. As a result of our conversation, I introduced Dahinda and Norma to the Archaeological Conservancy, a nonprofit organization devoted to protecting important archaeological sites like the Felice Creek petroglyph boulder. Dahinda and Norma wished to see terrarium protected after they were gone, and the Archaeological Conservancy has made that possible. So, on a late spring day in 2010, I took my son to visit Dahinda and Norma at terrarium. We had a delightful visit, spending the better part of the day with our host. As we were about to leave, Dahinda presented John with a number of bone gifts, including an intact buffalo skull. Being the avid bone collector that he is, John was elated with his gifts, especially the bison skull. For all of his life, John has had a passion for bones. In our walks, he is always on the lookout for new bones to study. When he was younger, he enjoyed piecing together skeletons from the bones he found beside the trail. And sometimes he'd create brand new kinds of animals from the various bits and pieces of bone he'd found. So this experience at the petroglyph boulder was a memorable one for him, given the many bones he saw and touched. While we were there, I wanted to take a photo of John standing beside the Felice Creek petroglyph boulder as a way to remember the day. I set the photo up and then asked John to close his eyes and tell me what he saw. "I see my bones," he replied. Then I snapped the photo while his eyes were still shut. I assumed John meant that he could see the bones he had found along the trail. After all, he was clutching a pig mandible at the time. But on questioning him further, I learned that he was referring to his own bones, those hard things within us that serve to remind others of our mortality when we have passed on. As I thought about what John had said, it moved me to think that in his answer, he had perhaps found a fitting example of the conflict that exists between permanence and the absence of permanence. And thus he had found a definition for life itself. Indeed, if we can envision or see our bones, then we have recognized the mortality of our own being. John understands that in time he will become an arrangement of bones, much like the remnants of dead animals he has often encountered along the trail. And yet the ability to see one's bones speaks to more than just the mortality of life itself. It denotes a separation of body and spirit, whereby the spirit looks back at what is mortal, in other words, the body and ego, while letting go. To see one's bones is perhaps another way of defining transcendence. If that is the case, then what better place for John to have defined transcendence than at this sacred rock? As a result, the Felice Creek boulder will never seem quite the same to me again. And that causes me to wonder how many others have had similar experiences at the rock over the countless millennia of its use, or at other places like it. I suspect that this boulder on Felice Creek has been perceived throughout antiquity as a portal to the other world. It appears to be a rock steeped in a nuance of transcendence. This makes for an incredibly special place, and it helps connect me to it. Being John's dad these past 14 years has inspired a sense of place in me that connects this bag of bones I call myself to the land in ways I didn't know before. Permanence and the lack of same have taken on new meaning for me, as have the concepts of continuance, inheritance, and nothingness. John still has Dahinda's buffalo skull. I told him that perhaps one day we'll gift it to Wavoka's family, friends of ours on the Walker River Indian Reservation in Nevada. John's not sure he wants to part with it just yet. I think that day will come, though, and then he'll be off on some new adventure on some other plane. Transcendence is like that.